Hello there. As many of you know, I've been hard at work on my God of War movie for a while. I thought maybe I'd give you a little bit of a behind-the-scenes look at what's going on. Um, One of the things that I like to do when I'm making my video game movies that maybe is a little bit different from some of the other video game movies you might see on YouTube is that, well, when you're playing a video game, you get a lot of these button prompts here, right? These things pop up like this, and that's not something you would normally see in a real movie you watch. So, since the point of my channel is I try to get these video game movies to feel as much like a Hollywood movie as possible, one of the ideas I came up with is to try to remove these whenever possible. Well, it's a lot of work, some of you may have remembered I posted a video while I was working on Beyond Two Souls. I posted a video showing one of the methods I used to get rid of these things, and that was through Photoshop, going frame by frame and using the content-aware fill option. And it works. It works pretty well for some kinds of shots. The problem is it doesn't work for every kind of shot. The shots that it works best for are either if the things you want to remove are really small, like these dots would work pretty good with Photoshop on their own, but these big objects probably wouldn't. Or if they're big, they can work if the objects on screen are moving fairly quickly or hectic, so that when it's moving around, when you're removing it, you're not going to notice if it's not perfect. The problem with a shot like this, as you can see here, is, well, the objects kind of stay in the same place. If they move, they don't move a lot. And so if there are issues with the removal process, which that content-aware process, while it works nicely, it's not perfect. It has a lot of random generation to try to guess what's behind it. And so when you're trying to remove something that's staying in the same spot, you're going to see a lot of flickering there. So it doesn't really work. So what I need to do is somehow replace these objects with what's behind them. Well, that's easier said than done. And the thing I really need to do then is I have this program called Mocha Pro that helps me do this. Mocha is a tracker. What it does is it can track any flat surface, basically. That's the idea of it. So right now, obviously, we have this background here. So if I can track this background, maybe I've got the information I need to replace these objects. So the idea is if an object moves in front of the background, or we've got a clean shot of it in another frame, we can sort of grab the information from those frames to fill in the gaps when we remove these button prompts. The problem is, and here I'm going to show you this shot in full to see what we're working with here, and you'll see why this is going to be a little bit of an issue after you watch it.
The left! Middle bar!
Gotta get them in order. Moon left, sun right. With Midgard in
The right, boy! Left, boy!
Moon on the left, sun on the right.
The middle!
Okay, so as you can see, we have Kratos trapped here. Atreus is over there by the wall, and Kratos is telling him what to do to solve this puzzle that will free him from this trap. Well, okay, so before we can track this background surface for the wall, first of all, we need to tell it what not to track, and that's everything that's in front of that wall, that's moving in front of that wall. So first we have these button prompts here, and then we've got these objects moving from the puzzle. And then more importantly, we've also got Kratos here in the foreground, and also a little bit of Atreus moving in front of the background as well. All of these things are going to interfere with our ability to track that background properly. So what we need to do is basically trace out every single one of those elements on screen, and that tells Mocha not to track those parts of the screen. That's pretty complicated. This is a 30-second shot, and it's so that's nearly 900 frames. And so there's a lot of basically hand tracing of these things. Now, Mocha is a tracker, so what we can do is we can sort of treat these objects like flat surfaces, and that will help us move through the tracing process a little quicker. But since some of these objects, like especially Kratos and Atreus, are not perfectly flat surfaces, they don't track perfectly. So we do need to do a lot of hand-by-hand fixing. The first things that are easiest to remove are the button prompts here, because they're pretty much stay in the same spot on screen, and they don't really animate or anything like that. So they're the easiest to remove. Unfortunately, I don't have footage of that right now, so we're going to skip over that part. That part's already done. The next part we're going to show is tracing over Kratos and showing out how we use both the tracking and the manual controls to remove him. And that'll be the next thing we do. Okay, so here we are. We have a little bit of a path drawn around Kratos a little bit here. And what we do is it doesn't have to be perfect, because all we're really trying to do is trying to mask out this part of the picture. So we have this little messy traced path all around Kratos, and we're just adjusting it so that it sort of matches around him. And then we track forward. And so this sort of tries to track Kratos as if he was a flat surface. But then every few frames, because he's not a flat surface, it gets messed up. And we have to go back through here and realign some of these points so that they're not too far off of where we're trying to track. And the idea is by the end we'll have sort of a animated version of Kratos' path, so that while we're tracking the background shot, Kratos will not be part of what's being tracked in that background. So it's a really lengthy process. We got every few frames we have to go back through here and correct it again. So I'm going to skip through the rest of this, and you'll now see what it looks like once I've finished tracking Kratos. So here we have it. Kratos is finished tracking. You see all those green points are all the adjustments I had to make over the many times. And here he is in motion. You can see the path sort of following his general motion. It's not, like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to block out where he is, so that once we track that background, he's not interfering with that tracking process. So let's just watch the rest of this motion here, and then we're going to get to tracking Atreus next. So again, here we have the same process we did with Kratos. Well, the only thing that's nicer about Atreus is that he's much smaller on the screen. He doesn't need as many points. I don't need to be as accurate with his motion either. So when I do the tracking, it's going to go by a little bit quicker. I don't need to worry too much about how inaccurate it is. There's still a lot of adjustment that needs to be done, but it's not as bad as Kratos. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fast forward this a little bit, and you'll see some of what I was doing through this tracking process. And then after this, we've done Atreus and we've done Kratos. Those are the two hardest parts, because those are the organic materials that animate. And next we're going to work on the easier, more flat objects, the objects that are part of the puzzle, such as the Earth, the Moon, and the Sun objects that Atreus has to move around the wall. So here I'm going to show you tracking the Earth object, the object that represents the Earth. And this is the easiest one, because it's just a plain circle, and it's a flat object, and that means the tracking is going to be pretty straightforward. I won't even really need to make almost any adjustments at all with this. Maybe a little bit here and there. But I'm going to go ahead and fast forward through this, and you'll see how straightforward that was for a flat object. And that's really what Mocha does best at, is flat objects. And now after this is done, I'm going to skip forward a little bit and show you what it looked like after all of the objects have been tracked. So Kratos, Atreus, and all of these puzzle objects, so that now we have everything masked out that needs to be masked out for tracking the background properly. And here we go. And now that every other foreground object is tracked, now the step is to work on the background. Okay, so now all the foreground objects are out of the way. That means now I can start drawing my shape for what the background is going to be. Even though it's supposed to be a flat surface, this background isn't completely flat, but it's close enough that the tracking is going to work really well. And so now all these foreground objects have their paths basically erased from the screen. So while it's tracking now, all of those objects are not going to get in the way, and it can look at just what's behind them, which is the background here. And so as it keeps moving, the problem with tracking the background is not as simple as tracking, like, for example, those puzzle objects. Like for those, I could just draw a shape and then track forward, and it was pretty much going to work just fine. I could try that with the background, but the problem is the camera keeps moving. So as the camera keeps moving, the tracking kind of sticks out past the edge of the frame, and that can sort of make things a little less accurate. So what I like to do is like step forward and find good key points in the video where the camera starts and stops moving, and I kind of just reset my shape here so that it sort of looks good on screen. Everything's on screen, and it sort of just represents what I'm trying to track. And then once all that's done, then I go back and trace the entire video through using the surface tracker, just like I did for the puzzle pieces and everything else. And so now that I've adjusted my shape, going back and tracking, it makes the process a lot smoother, and the end tracking looks a lot nicer because I did that. And next, after this, now that it's tracked, I'm going to skip forward and show you what it looks like finished. I've put a 3D plane on here so you can actually see how the camera movements affect the 3D surface of the background as it moves forward. So as you can see, it follows the movement of the camera and the background surface very well. And now that it's done that, I should be able to start working on removing objects. Now the easiest way to do this is we can tell the program where the clean plates are. Clean plates are where there's nothing obstructing the image. And in this case, we have some clean plates here where I'm pointing my mouse on the edge of where the button prompts begin and end. So when the button prompts are off screen, we can use that information to tell it that that's what we're going to replace the button prompts with. So because it knows where the background surface moves, it can use information from previous frames to fill in the gaps. And here, every time I reach one of these important keyframes for a clean plate, I go ahead and save an image file. That way, when I'm removing, the program can refer to those clean plate image files and use what information is in those files to fill in the gaps of where the button prompts get removed. So now that I have all the image files saved, I can tell it to use clean plates only in its render and begin the render. And as you'll see, it moves forward. It's pretty slow as it's rendering, but that's simply because there are so many layers for it to figure out here. As it goes forward, you can see that they're no longer button prompts. You see the background through them now, as if they were see-through, but they're actually gone now. We've just rendered them out completely. And here's going to be a quick glimpse at what that looks like finished. So now I've completed the render, and I'm going to go ahead and quickly play this back. And I'm going to play it back real quickly. And I've disabled the button prompt layer so you can actually see behind it here. And it looks pretty nice, I think. And now that this is done, now we just need to export it And the way we do that is we export it to PNG image files so we don't lose any of the quality when we're going to import it back into Premiere later. And that's it. So now we're going to let that go for a while, and it's going to take a while to render because, again, there is almost 900 frames, and we're going to come back when it's done. Okay, now the exporting is done, and since this was, like I said, it was almost 900 frames, that exporting process took almost an hour to complete. On top of that, it took me almost all day to do this entire process. So these effects can sometimes take a long time to finish, but we're finished rendering, we're finished exporting, so now we can import them back into the project here. And we've got it right here. They are rendered out as individual images. We're going to import them as an image sequence so it gets treated like video. Place that in over our shot here. And there's one thing I like to do here to just force it to render. Or we're going to render a preview in Premiere because otherwise it's trying to play back a ton of individual high-quality image files, and high-quality image files can take a long time to play back instead of playing back in real time. So we're going to let this render for a second here. Okay, so now we have the finished render, and we can play back the finished effect in real time, and you'll see what all of our hard work has produced.
The left! Middle bar!
Gotta get them in order. Moon left, sun right. With Midgard in
The
the...
right, boy! Left, boy!
Moon on the left, sun on the right.
The middle!
So I would say that's pretty convincing. It's not 100% perfect. I do notice a little bit of issues here and there, but it's not something you're really going to notice unless you're looking for it, which is the key. Sometimes, you know, that's going to happen. You can't get a perfect replacement. But it's really close. Like, that looks like almost exactly like what it's supposed to look like. So you're only going to notice those little, there's a little bit of blurriness maybe here and there and stuff, but you're not going to really notice that stuff unless you're really looking for it. So there we go. Now this is one of the most complicated effects shots I've done in this movie, period. It might even be the most, honestly. So most of the time, I think my average effect is 90 frames. And, you know, if I have to track anything, it's maybe one layer or two at the most. And so most of the time it's nowhere near this complicated, but I wanted to use this shot because it's the most useful example I have, basically, because it's got so much to do. And it also results in a pretty impressive final result as well. So there you have it. That's this effect done. For those of you who played God of War, you might have some idea of where I'm at in the process based on this video. For those who haven't, you can always go to my channel, and at the very top right now I have a banner with God of War on there. Right now the best estimated release window is later part of Q4 this year. I think I'll probably be getting a more precise release window pretty soon, but this is as accurate as I can be right now. This process can be hard to predict exactly, so sometimes it takes a while before I know exactly when it's going to come out, but just keep an eye on my channel art, and that will update as soon as I know more on when it's going to be. Also, you can follow my Patreon, and I do have updates just about every day that I work on the movie posted on there, as well as if you would like to download full quality versions of all my movies, I do have links to those on there as well for the $5 subscribers. But otherwise, make sure to subscribe so you know when my God of War movie is out. Keep an eye on my channel, and thanks for watching. Bye.